Okay. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning in for another online tour at the Stedelijk. My name is Anne Ruygt, and I work here as Junior Curator of Photography. And today we're standing in Stedelijk BASE, and I will give you a tour here, and I will focus on some of the women photographers that are in our collection. But before we start, of course, I hope you're all doing okay and that you're safe. And of course, we hope to really see you soon again here at the Stedelijk. Yesterday evening, we got some very exciting news from the Dutch government that the museums in the Netherlands are set to open again on June 1st. So that's very good news, because it feels very wrong, of course, to be standing here in an empty museum. Today it's just me, our security, and our online team, Femke and Sven. And we're all, of course, standing at a safe distance. But of course, we hope to welcome you back here soon at the Stedelijk. As you may have noticed, we've pre-recorded this video to make sure that all the technique is running smoothly. But if you have any questions or comments, please type them into the comment section. Because once you're seeing this on Instagram, I'll be at home sitting behind my laptop and ready to answer any questions. So please feel free to ask anything. And of course, if you're interested, you can always follow the Stedelijk by signing up for the newsletter and also follow the news on the reopening of the museum. But to start, I would like to begin with this wall we're standing here, which is the Bauhaus Photography. And I wanted to zoom in on the work of Irene Bayer-Hecht that you see right here. Of course, the Bauhaus is extremely well known as an interwar German art school combining design and crafts. And they had a massive influence, of course, on the development of art, architecture, graphic design, but also photography. And the wonderful news is that we have a great selection of Bauhaus photography here at the Stedelijk. And we switch these displays also quite regularly. So we're behind the scenes, we're already working on the new displays. But for now, I wanted to focus on this group of work. Irene Bayer-Hecht is a photographer. She was born in Chicago and moved to Europe for her studies. And in Berlin, she met the Bauhaus artist Herbert Bayer at an exhibition, and they married, fell in love. And she documented or recorded everyday life at the Bauhaus. So she documented the students there, or the person you saw in the photograph, Joost Siedhoff. He was the 4-year-old son of two artists, Alma Buscher and Werner Siedhoff. And what is so interesting when you look at this photograph, of course, you immediately see the strange camera angle from all the way up there and the diagonal composition. And of course, this was a very typical example of modernist photographer. These photographers were really trying to explore the world around them by really looking through the lens. Photography for them was a way to record modern life in the modern city. And that's something you really see in this image. Or in the other ones. I'm not sure if you can see all of them at once. And what is interesting is that her photographs were also published in various magazines, but also in the Dutch avant-garde magazine, I-10, which was edited by another famous Bauhaus artist, Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. And in this magazine, he made the famous quote, already in the 1920s, where he said that he made this famous claim that the illiterate of the future will be the person ignorant of the camera as well as the pen. So what he said was he really believed in this idea of visual literacy, which is now commonplace, of course, but at the time was very revolutionary. Okay, so from Bauhaus photography, I wanted to move to the next period in our collection display. We're now moving to the work of Emmy Andriessen, a photographer who was actually trained by the first generation of modernist photographers in the Netherlands. She was trained by Paul Schuitema and Gerrit Kilian, two other famous modernist artists. And I wanted to focus on this group of photographs, but this one in particular by Emmy Andriessen. And this is a photograph she took 75 years ago. Earlier this week here in the Netherlands we celebrated 75 years of freedom, and of course we commemorated the Second World War. And this photograph was taken shortly before the end of the Second World War. Emmy Andriessen, she was Jewish, living in Amsterdam, and she joined a group called the Ondergedoken Camera. Well, loosely translated, it's the camera in hiding. This was a form of resistance where photographers, professional and amateur photographers, were recording daily life in Amsterdam during the German occupation. Most of this work was done, of course, anonymously, because it was very dangerous. Because in fact, during this winter, the winter of 1944, it was illegal in the Netherlands to take any form of photography. So Emmy Andriessen and all these other photographers that were part of this group, Cas Oorthuis for instance, Ad Windig, they all were illegal in taking these photographs, and they were risking their lives. And what I find so remarkable about the work of Emmy Andriessen is that she was trained by modernist photographers, but she really developed this very humanist type of photography during this period, but also in the late 1940s, early 50s. And even when she photographs a bike, it has a very strong emotional and symbolic value. She was known for her beautiful and intimate portraits of people. And I also see that in this picture of a rundown bike. In this is expressing this really severe, devastating moment in Dutch history. So even in the most abstract images, I feel you really see this emotional and very personal approach to photography. Maybe you can also show some of the other works. So again, this is a very important group of photographs in our collection. And it's so difficult to imagine the circumstances and how difficult it was to take all these photographs, because they were really hiding the cameras in their coats or in bags. I would like to make another jump, and we have to go all the way to the other side of the collection display. We're going to the 1960s, so from this modernist era and the 1940s, we go all the way to the back. So please follow me. Yes. Okay. So in between all the paintings, we have another photographic work, a work by Bernd and Hilla Becher, of course another famous German photographers duo. And starting in the late 1950s, they recorded the industrial architecture of Germany, but also in the Netherlands. They photographed abroad. And they were systematic in their approach. They were very interested in the changes in the industrial architecture and the industrial regions. And they photographed water towers, coal bunkers, as you can see here, all in a very straightforward, almost deadpan manner. And they did this for decades and decades. They were very influential. There's even a Becher Schuler, a school of German photographers, including famous photographers like Andres Gursky, Thomas Ruf, Thomas Struth. And they were taught by Bernd and Hilla Becher. But what is also interesting in this type of photography is that, of course, it was very documentary. It was about documenting the industrial landscape. But the work was also really caught the eye of many conceptual artists. In the late 1960s, when conceptual artists started to use photography, the worlds of the conceptual artist and photography were very separate. There were very separate worlds. And I believe the Bechers were really the artists who really bridged this divide. There's a famous article by Carl Andre, the minimal artist, who wrote about this work in 1972 in Art Forum, because he was very interested in this whole systematic approach to these buildings. And he listed all these categories, these typologies that they used. And he was also very interested, of course, in the question what it means in terms of his own practice or in the terms of fine arts. But what is very nice is that he ends his article talking about the Beggars, is that he quotes Hilla Beggar as she said, well, the question if this is a work of art or not is not very interesting for us. Probably it is situated in between the established categories. So Carl Andre also leaves it in between. But still, the Beggars were a very influential duo in both the worlds of more documentary photography, but also as artists. From this artist duo, I want to move to another famous artist duo, and we have to make a short walk again to the other side, and also cross one of the fire doors. Let's see if it's open. Yes. Ooh. Okay. We go all the way to the last room of the Stedelijk BASE lower level galleries. And as you can see, it's very weird to have all these video works, all the neon works, everything is unplugged. Until, of course, we can reopen again. So this is another work I wanted to show you and share with you. Another famous duo, of course, Marina Abramovic and Ulay. And I wouldn't call Marina a photographer, but photography and video were very important tools for them to record their performances. Ulay and Marina, they were in a relationship and made work together from 1976 until 1988. And much of their work is about testing the limits of the human body. It's about being in a relationship, being an individual, but also in a relationship, and really exploring these roles of man and woman. Starting in the 1970s, they made several performances titled Relation in Space, Relation in Time, Relation in Movement. And the work you see here is titled Rest Energy. It's from 1980. And there's also a video from this performance that is also in the collection of the Stedelijk. And this was actually the shortest performance they ever did. It was a performance of about 4 minutes, and you can see why. It was, of course, you see a strong tension in the image. It's a very dangerous act they're doing, because you see them together holding a bow and arrow, and the arrow is, of course, pointed directly at Marina's heart. I think even in this single image, it references so many, or brings so many interesting ideas to mind. Of course, you immediately see Cupid with the arrow and the bow, but at the same time, it's quite a dark reflection also on, I would say, the traditional dominance of men over women. But it's also about their relationship being in balance, because they move slowly backwards, but if one of them moves too soon or loses their grip, of course, it's a very dangerous action. So even in this 4-minute performance, they recorded the sounds of their heartbeats. So if you see the video, you will hear their heartbeats speeding up while they're doing this, because of course it's a very tense performance to do. Of course, after they separated, both of them continued on working and creating very interesting artworks. And my colleague Ripsime Visser is actually working on an exhibition about the work of Ulay, which is set to open at the end of this year at the Stedelijk. Ulay unfortunately passed away earlier this year, but this will be a wonderful moment to really to see his work again in full. So the last stop I want to make is this work over here. a piece by, of course, a very iconic American artist, Cindy Sherman, who is known for her self-portraits, where she performs different female identities. And she started in the 1970s with the Untitled film stills, where she created black and white self-portraits, where she was playing these different characters. So she was dressing up, she was designing sets, and she was performing characters as if they were from B-movies, all these different female characters. But never did she really reference a specific actor. But in this case, in this work in 1980, when she started using color photography and when her set design became more elaborate, her performances and characters became more and more exaggerated. Here you can see she's also referencing, of course, Marilyn Monroe. And what is interesting is, of course, that she was also one of the most she's one of the most well-known artists from the Pictures generation, which is a group of American artists who came of age in the 1970s, who are known for their critical analysis of media culture. And you can immediately see why Cindy Sherman is, of course, one of the most iconic artists in this group. And what is also interesting to note is that in 1982, when she produced this work, she also had an exhibition at the Stedelijk, which was actually one of her first solo shows. It was really, she was still a very up-and-coming artist, and already she had a show here. And I'm very grateful that she did, because now we own quite a few very interesting photo works by her. And also a tip, something I can highly recommend. We, of course, know the black and white photographs from the 70s, these color photographs that are getting bigger and bigger also in the 1980s. But she's also continuing the work, and she's making these digitally altered selfies on Instagram. So if you're watching this on Instagram and if you finished this tour, I can highly recommend also going to her account, to Cindy Sherman's account, and to check out her later work. Still every few weeks or every few days she's posting new works. So I can highly recommend that. That's it for now. I would like to thank you.